You traversed their carefully laid traps, your soul remaining untouched and pristine. Now, they observe in hushed silence, attempting to decipher the enigma they will never truly grasp. You never begged for mercy. You refused to break under pressure. You didn't bleed loud enough to satisfy their craving for victory. And it's that very resilience that ignites their envy and frustration. You quietly forged your path forward, without seeking their validation, without debasing yourself for mere scraps of approval. Now they linger in the shadows, feigning indifference while meticulously dissecting your every move, scrutinizing you, as if you were some rare and elusive species that somehow slipped through the cracks of their meticulously crafted system. You are the unexpected glitch in their carefully controlled world. You stand as undeniable proof that their rigid structure is built upon a foundation of lies, and the truth is driving them to the brink of madness. You see, they are not watching you out of admiration or affection. They are watching you with the same trepidation and fascination that scientists reserve for a volatile storm they cannot predict or control. They watch with frustration because you weren't supposed to succeed. Not without sacrificing your integrity. Not without joining their elaborate charade of masks and false pretenses. But here you stand, chosen by a force far greater than mere status or social standing, untouched by the mud they slung your way, and continuing to rise above it all. You didn't just survive their schemes. You utterly embarrassed them by succeeding on your own terms, by forging your own path. And if this message resonates deep within you, if it speaks to a truth they desperately wanted to keep hidden, then seize this moment. Click like and subscribe, not for me, but to amplify this message, to send it echoing to every soul navigating their own fiery trials, feeling utterly alone. It is our shared responsibility to shine this light brighter than their suffocating silence. Let's make one thing crystal clear. People like you were never meant to blend into the background. You didn't just enter the spotlight, you became the spotlight itself. You were not chasing fleeting moments on stages, seeking hollow applause, or desperately seeking acceptance. You were forged in the crucible of rejection, crafted in the solitude of self-reliance, and supported by the very fabric of the universe. That's why they scrutinize you with such intensity. That's why a palpable tension fills the room whenever your name is mentioned. Not peace but paranoia, because they harbor a secret fear they will never utter aloud. You made it, and you made it clean. No shortcuts taken, no masks worn. No need to contort yourself into something hollow just to fit their preordained mold. You moved with the force of truth itself, raw, unyielding, and slow-burning, and that is what makes you so dangerous. Psychological research confirms this. When someone defies the expected path and still thrives, they become an object of obsessive fascination for those who feel trapped in their own lives. Your mere presence exposes their excuses. Your unwavering growth mocks their laziness. Your light forces them to confront their deepest shadows. This is not inspiration to them. It's agitation. They don't admire you. They dissect you. They monitor your story not because they love it, but because they cannot comprehend how it's even possible. You weren't born into privilege or power. You built it brick by agonizing brick through every betrayal, setback, and silent season. While they were meticulously rehearsing how to conform, you were becoming impossible to ignore. And now you are the unanswered question lurking in every insecure room. You are the living reminder that truth can prevail. And they despise that because your victory wasn't just personal. It was a resounding act of defiance. You're not just on their minds, you're under their microscope. They attempt to replicate your results, but they will never arrive at the same conclusion because they skipped the essential ingredients. The pain, the process, the purity. You weren't constructed in the public eye. You were built in the darkness. And now that you are shining, it's incinerating their illusions. So don't flinch when you feel their eyes upon you. Don't shrink back because they are watching. That's exactly what they want. For you to question your power, your path, your progress. But you didn't come this far to make them comfortable. You didn't rise just to sit still. Let them stare. Let them wonder. Let them talk. Because the truth is this. You didn't follow their map. You became the compass itself. And no wonder you're being studied because you made it. So, if you've ever felt eyes on you, silence enveloping you, or a shift in energy when you enter a room, stay right here. That's not coincidence. That's confirmation. You're not just surviving. You're being observed because you have already crossed the line they swore you would never reach. Drop the number 77 in the comments if you know you've escaped their system and now they can't stop watching. The ones who truly understand this, feel it. And if you're truly chosen, something within you won't allow you to click away. Let's get into it. Number 1. They're not watching to learn. They're watching because you shattered their system and kept walking. You were supposed to fold under pressure. Instead, you transformed into an unstoppable force. Now they watch not to admire you but to calculate where their plan went wrong. They don't watch you with awe. They don't scroll through your life with respect. What you perceive as curiosity is actually damage control. It's the desperate silence of people who thought they had you completely figured out, only to realize you were speaking an entirely different language they never learned to decipher. You were supposed to break. Remember, you were designed to fail. In their minds, you had no blueprint, no backing, no business succeeding against all odds. But you did. And now all they have left is confusion masked as interest. Let's stop sugarcoating it. These people aren't inspired. They're shaken to their core. They had the script ready. You'd crumble, beg, blend in, and fade away. You didn't. You rewrote the entire story with your very survival. And now they're relegated to the sidelines, treating your life like a science experiment, attempting to dissect your calm, decode your strength, and figure out how someone like you slipped through the cracks without selling out. They never anticipated you walking through hell without scars that made you bitter. They never expected your peace to remain intact after such profound betrayals. And they damn sure never expected you to smile like someone who wasn't supposed to be buried. That's why they watch. That's why their silence is so deafening. They're not taking notes out of admiration. They're taking notes because your very existence exposes them. Because here's what they can't wrap their heads around. You didn't respond the way they wanted you to. They hurled disrespect at you like knives, and you didn't bleed publicly. They questioned you, mocked you, isolated you, and you didn't beg to be understood. You just leveled up quietly, strategically, unapologetically. Now look around. They're still talking in circles, trying to figure out what fuel you used to fly while they remained grounded. Here's the truth. They underestimated the power of not being seen. They mistook silence for weakness. They thought that just because you weren't loud, you weren't dangerous. But your power was never meant for their comfort. It was meant to disrupt. You became the disruption. You didn't ask for permission. You became the permission. And they can't understand how that happened without their stamp of approval. They thought your pain would transform you into them. Bitter, small, performative. But instead, your pain became precision. You learned how to navigate rooms that weren't designed for you and still command presence without uttering a single word. They wanted you to embody the labels they assigned you. Failure, victim, nobody. But you peeled every one of those off, burned them, and built armor from the ashes. Now they watch because they don't know how to categorize you anymore. You don't fit the files, you don't match the patterns. You're emotionally unreadable because you've outgrown their games. And nothing terrifies manipulators more than someone they can't control or predict. They're not curious. They're disturbed. They thought you'd mirror their behavior. They thought you'd lash out, spiral, fold inwards. But instead, you found clarity. You learned how to love yourself in a world that taught you to doubt your every step. That's why they study you now, because you became the one thing their ego can't compete with, a soul that survived with integrity. They'll never admit it, but your growth cornered them. Your calm made them nervous. Your elevation put pressure on their comfort. And now they wear fake smiles and give hollow compliments while secretly running an internal autopsy on your life, wondering how you transformed pain into peace, betrayal into boundaries, and isolation into power. And you want to know the part that stings them the most? You didn't just survive. You thrived with nothing but your vision, your pain, and your relentless refusal to become small. You didn't get their approval, and you didn't need it. You didn't play their games, and you still won. You didn't fit in, and now they don't know how to replace you. They try to mimic your energy now, but it doesn't land. Why? Because what you carry wasn't bought, borrowed, or inherited. It was earned in silence, in suffering, in seasons where no one applauded you but the universe itself. That's the difference. You didn't perform for power. You became power by refusing to betray yourself. So now they study, they observe, they lurk. Not to learn how to rise, but to understand how you rose without them. They treat your peace like it's suspicious, your joy like it's manufactured, your glow like it must be hiding something because they can't believe you made it out without becoming them. But here's the cold truth. You don't owe them clarity. You don't owe them softness. You don't owe them access. You owe yourself the silence to keep building while they keep guessing. Let them confuse your evolution with ego. Let them call your peace fake. Let them choke on their projections while you breathe freely for the first time in years. Because you didn't become the chosen one by accident. You became the chosen one because when everything in life told you to disappear, you showed up anyway, louder in presence, quieter in reaction, sharper in energy. You are the contradiction they never prepared for. And no wonder they're still watching because you made it. Number 2. You didn't just break their blueprint. You proved it was built for cowards. They built a maze and called it success. You walked straight through the wall. Now they stand on the other side, stunned, asking how. You didn't just ignore their map. You burned it. You didn't ask for directions from people who never left their block. You didn't beg for approval from a system that was never designed with your survival in mind. And now they watch. They obsess. They analyze every move you make like you're some anomaly they can't duplicate. Because you are. Let's be clear. They're not mad because you failed to follow their rules. They're mad because you succeeded without them. You weren't supposed to get here unless you followed their toxic traditions. Kiss the ring, play the game, silence your truth, mimic their version of professional, and beg for crumbs like it's gourmet. But you didn't. You built your own table. You used your scars as screws, your silence as wood, your fire as the hammer, and you sat at that table alone until the universe pulled the right chairs around it. And now they want to know how. Now they want a seat. But they don't get one because you didn't just flip the script. You exposed the fraud in theirs. You see, people don't get uncomfortable when you do things wrong. They get uncomfortable when you do things right without following the formula they believe is law. They don't envy your journey. They envy the fact that their journey, with all its fake rules and ego worship, didn't deliver what yours did. Peace, purpose, and power. So they stare, they gossip, they critique. She must have had help. He probably got lucky. There's no way they did it without something shady. That's the language of people who can't fathom real because they sold pieces of themselves to climb ladders made of illusion. And they can't believe you made it without ever stepping foot on those rungs. You didn't sacrifice your integrity to be seen. You didn't trade your truth to be included. You walked your own path and still made it to a place they thought only belonged to the compromised. That's why they're angry. You didn't network at the fake parties. You didn't suck up to empty titles. You didn't water yourself down to make others feel big. You stood in the full weight of your truth and rose. You were the outlier in their algorithm, the wild card in their system, the glitch in the matrix they worship like scripture. They spent years building fake pyramids of status, climbing over each other to touch a fake crown. And here you come with no blueprint, no approval, no crowd, and still you make it. You're not supposed to exist, let alone thrive. You're the contradiction their ego can't solve. You didn't wear the costume. You didn't learn their dance. You didn't shrink yourself to fit into their filtered reality. That's what drives them mad because everything they told themselves was essential was never real to begin with. It was just protection for their fear. You didn't have fear, you had fire. And that fire, it didn't come from books, mentors, or motivational speeches. It came from the nights no one applauded, the days you questioned your worth, the years they called you too much or not enough. And still you kept going. Still you chose yourself over and over again. That's what they don't get. You didn't just win, you won without abandoning yourself. And now they want to reverse engineer the results. Not to celebrate, not to honor, but to try and control it, to bottle it, to fake it. But they can't because what you carry can't be taught. It must be survived. They don't understand how someone who didn't take their path still reached a place higher than where they've been circling for years. They want your success, but not your struggle. They want your shine, but not your solitude. They want your voice, but only if it echoes theirs. And that's not how this works, because you weren't made by the system. You were forged by the rejection of it. You didn't just walk your own path. You paved it through terrain they were too scared to even look at. And now they sit at their well-decorated desks in glass towers of hollow influence, trying to build a you in a lab. Good luck. You can't clone what was created in chaos. You can't copy what was born from being crushed. You can't replicate resilience, you earn it. And that's what you did, in silence, in struggle, in complete defiance of their lies. They will call you arrogant now because your existence reminds them of their compromise. They'll label you difficult because your truth has no brakes. They'll say you're lucky because accepting your power means admitting their weakness. Let them say it. Let them circle your name like vultures, trying to find a crack in your legacy. Let them study your story like a failed equation, because that's what it is to them. You're not a role model. You're a revelation. And revelations aren't welcomed. They're resisted. But the truth stands even when surrounded by denial. You made it without the spotlight, without the sponsor, without the shortcut. And now they have to face the brutal reality. Their blueprint was never the only way. It was just the easy way. You didn't take easy, you took real. You walked through rejection, isolation, envy, and misunderstanding. And still you made it. So let them keep watching. Let them keep guessing. Let them keep losing sleep over how you turned nothing into everything without giving up your soul. Because they thought the system was unbreakable. They thought the rules were fixed. They thought success belonged to them until you proved otherwise. And now, no wonder they're obsessed, because you didn't follow their blueprint. You exposed it. Number 3. They thought the pain would shatter you. Instead, you turned it into a weapon. They expected your trauma to break you. Instead, it baptized you in fire. And now you move like someone who's already survived the end of the world. Pain was supposed to be your prison. That's what they counted on. They watched the betrayals stack up, the lies build, the losses hit like wrecking balls. And they sat back, waiting for you to fold, waiting for you to crack. They expected you to drown in bitterness, to become a shadow of yourself. But what they didn't know is some souls don't drown in darkness. They learn to breathe in it. They wanted your trauma to define you. Instead, you defined yourself in spite of it. You didn't shatter, you sharpened. You didn't collapse. You constructed something stronger from the rubble. Every heartbreak carved out space for wisdom. Every betrayal taught you how to see people with X-ray vision. Every moment of isolation turned into a lesson in power, the kind of power that doesn't shout, but hums under your skin like silent thunder. And that's what terrifies them now, because the loud ones, the performative ones, they're easy to predict, easy to break, easy to manipulate. But someone like you, someone who went through hell and came back with clarity, that's a different kind of threat. You didn't just face pain, you used it. And they have no idea how to handle someone who's already survived the very things they'd used to destroy others. Look at history. Frida Kahlo painted masterpieces from her hospital bed with a spine broken in 3 places and a heart broken in 100 more. They thought physical pain would silence her, but it turned her into a living revolution. Malcolm X spent years in prison, written off by society, only to rise with razor-sharp intellect and a voice that still echoes through generations. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in a cage and walked out with more peace in his heart than the men who locked him up. You know what connects them all? Pain didn't break them. It revealed them. And now you walk in that same lineage. You're part of the bloodline that turns trauma into transformation. That's what makes you dangerous. Not your strength, but what you did with your suffering. You didn't just get over it. You grew through it quietly, intentionally, unapologetically. You became the kind of person who can't be shocked anymore because you've already lived through the unthinkable. You move differently now. You see through masks. You smell lies before they're spoken. That's not coldness. That's calibration. People don't understand that kind of power, so they label it. She's too guarded. He's too intense. They've changed. Damn right you've changed, you had to. Trauma doesn't leave you the same. It either buries you or builds you. And you let it build brick by brutal brick. You learned how to take the wreckage and sculpt a stronger version of yourself. Now your resilience speaks louder than your words. Your calm is louder than their chaos. And your presence. It's intimidating not because it's loud, but because it's undeniable. You're dangerous now, not because you seek revenge, not because you want attention, but because you're healed. And healing is a rebellion. In a world that profits off brokenness, wholeness is a threat. The system relies on people staying dependent, staying reactive, staying unsure. But you've reclaimed your power. You know yourself. You trust your gut. And that makes you someone they can't predict or control. So yes, they're watching you now, trying to figure out how you didn't fall apart. How you still smile with all that history in your bones. How you speak with clarity after being silenced. How you walk with grace after crawling through glass. And they'll keep watching because they can't comprehend it. They've never seen someone so deeply hurt, still love with discernment, so violently betrayed, still lead with wisdom, so thoroughly tested, and still refuse to turn bitter. You are proof that pain doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it sculpts. You are the living contradiction to their assumption that trauma equals tragedy. You turned your pain into prophecy. And now your very existence is the revenge. Not the petty kind, not the showy kind, the inevitable kind. The kind that rises above without needing to explain, apologize, or seek permission. So let them stare. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. You didn't just survive, you transcended. And that's why they're afraid, because they know now if pain couldn't break you, nothing can. Number 4. You don't have to speak. Your presence exposes their lies. When truth walks in, performance gets nervous. That's why they fidget when you show up. Not because you said anything, but because they can't fake it when you're near. You don't need a stage. You don't need a spotlight. You don't even have to say a word. Your existence alone calls the room to attention. Not with noise, not with ego, but with something far more rare. Authenticity. In a world addicted to pretending, your realness is a silent earthquake. You walk in and suddenly the air feels heavier for them. Not because you brought drama, but because you brought truth. And truth doesn't shout. It exposes. They don't squirm because you attack. They squirm because your peace reminds them of the war they're faking to win. They wear their masks so tight they forgot who they were until you show up. And then suddenly every fake laugh feels louder. Every phony gesture feels forced. Every lie they've rehearsed starts to crack around the edges. You're not performing, and that's the threat. You don't chase deep quotes or curated aesthetics to look real. You just are. And the world doesn't know what to do with real anymore. They market authenticity but panic when it walks in the room, unfiltered and unbothered. You don't have to tear anyone down. Your presence does it for you. Because people know when they're next to someone who paid for their identity with pain, who earned their discernment through loss, and who forged their power in silence. Not online, not in meetings, but in the depths of being misunderstood. Think of James Baldwin, who sat across from intellectuals and politicians and dismantled decades of illusion with a calm, terrifying clarity. He didn't yell, he revealed. Or Maya Angelou, whose presence alone was thunder wrapped in elegance. Her truth wasn't just poetic. It was radioactive. It didn't scream. It peeled the masks off gently, one by one. You carry that same weight, that same frequency, and it rattles them. You aren't dramatic. You're devastating. Not because of calm, not chaos, not flash but substance. You force people to face the demons they've been fleeing from. Entering a room, every pretense crumbles. Insecurities scramble for cover. You're a mirror, and not everyone is ready for that reflection because you expose what performances can't fake. Inner peace, genuine power, silent knowing. That presence is impossible to duplicate. You reveal how far people have strayed from themselves. That's why you evoke both hate and admiration, mockery and imitation in the same breath. They can't replace what eludes their grasp, so they mimic, hoping something will stick. But your power wasn't acquired. It was earned through survival. It burns them to touch it. Let's delve into psychology. Research shows that individuals with a firm sense of identity and internal validation often disrupt social dynamics, particularly in groups built on performance, status, or unspoken hierarchies. You don't engage in those games. You don't need to. You bring alignment, and that alignment creates discord in rooms built on lies. That's why they throw subtle jabs, question your tone, exaggerate your presence. Too serious, too intense, too different. No, you're not too anything. You're just true. Their performance wasn't designed to withstand that. They crave applause, you live for truth. They study how to impress, you simply are impactful. They chase validation, you walked away from it and never looked back. That haunts them. Now they dress up envy as critique, offering backhanded praise. Who do they think they are? They ask, afraid to confront who they've become. Let them ask. Let them shift uncomfortably when you enter, because you're not here to blend in. You're here to disrupt what pretends. And you do so effortlessly because you are the rarest kind of force, undeniably real. That's what makes you chosen and precisely why they study you. Number 5, you're not just alive. You're living proof of their failure. They whispered your obituary, and now they watch you live like a headline. They wanted more than to hurt you. They sought to quietly, strategically erase you, the way cowards do. They weaponized rumors, twisted your name, and turned your kindness into target practice. They smiled in your face while crafting a coffin behind your back. When that didn't break you, they tried silence, not peace, not distance, but calculated strategic silence meant to isolate, erase, unperson you in slow motion. But here you stand, not just alive, not just standing, but thriving. You are the living receipt of every attempt and every failure to diminish you. Your glow isn't just success. It's proof. Your smile, documentation. Your healing, evidence. Your joy, a signed affidavit declaring, yes, I walked through hell, and no, you couldn't keep me there. You are the contradiction to the narrative they handcrafted, like assassins in suits and social circles. They called you unstable, but you became grounded. They said you were difficult, but you became disciplined. They whispered that you were weak, but you returned with undeniable strength. Their lies began to sound like confessions. Every time you rise, their version of the story crumbles a little more. Let's call it what it is. They wanted you invisible, not just gone from the room, but erased from memory, ghosted from the story. You were a threat to their comfort. So they tried to dismantle your existence, one emotional brick at a time. But they made one fatal mistake. You weren't soil, you were seed. They tried to bury you, not realizing they were planting the very thing that would grow beyond their reach. You didn't just survive, you grew. Now your very presence, your peace, your refusal to shrink is the loudest revenge imaginable. There's no comeback louder than quiet success. No scream sharper than calm, unapologetic healing. No slap harder than being everything they tried to prevent without becoming bitter, broken, or like them. Look at history. Tupac Shakur survived multiple assassination attempts by bullets and media, and still spoke louder from his truth than entire generations of polished silence. Harriet Tubman wasn't just hunted. She was erased in real time, yet she walked dozens to freedom with scars on her body and fire in her soul. Jean-Michel Basquiat, a black artist in a white-curated art world, was called untrained, unstable, even disposable, but he became eternal. You walk with that same coded energy, the kind that says, I'm not just here, I'm living proof. You weren't supposed to be this full, this vibrant, this aware, but you are. You're not walking to prove anything. You are the proof. Every breath you take is a broken lie. Every win, a sentence they now have to swallow. Every ounce of peace you hold is a war they lost. So let them watch. Let them sit in the front row of your resilience because you're not just the one who made it out. You're the one they couldn't kill. Number 6, you're the frequency they can't decode, and that scares them. You don't move like them, and that's not rebellion. That's resonance. You're tuned to a wavelength their ego can't pick up, and their system was never built to receive. You don't walk like them. You don't speak like them. You don't chase what they chase, and they feel it. Even without the words to name it, they feel in their gut that you're not one of them and never were. You are the anomaly, the outlier, the glitch in the spiritual fabric they tried to iron flat. They crafted a world based on noise, and you came in tuned to silence. They built an identity around titles, clout, and curated images, but you showed up whole, with nothing to prove and everything aligned. That's what makes you dangerous. They can't measure you, mock what they can't define, or manipulate what they can't locate. Because while they're running on ego, you're running on essence. You're not moved by popularity, seduced by applause, or here for the stage. You are here for the signal. You move by a code that doesn't need translation. That's why they don't understand you but can't look away either. It's why they copy your style, mimic your tone, steal your language, but can never embody your energy. Because your energy isn't studied. It's earned through pain, silence, and the invisible battles that don't show up on resumes or timelines. You are the kind of soul this system didn't prepare for, because you don't run on the fuel they sell. They use fear to control. You use stillness to guide. They use ambition to chase. You use alignment to move. Their compass points to money, followers, and illusion. Yours points to legacy, truth, and depth. That contrast, that quiet refusal to play their game, shakes them. You're not a spiritual tourist. You didn't pick this up for aesthetics. You carry ancient weight in your bones. You've seen through lifetimes in a single silence. You've had revelations in heartbreak that rewired your entire blueprint. That's not trend. That's transcendence. They sense your depth but pretend it's darkness. They call you intense when they mean intimidating. They say you're different when what they really mean is you remind them of everything they're not. You weren't made to fit their system. You were born to remind them it's broken. That's why they study you, try to label you, try to find the cracks. But you're not broken. You just don't belong to them. You were forged elsewhere, in stillness, in knowing, in dimensions they've only read about, and they know it. They've felt it in the pauses between your words, seen it in how you hold your peace when chaos would be easier, caught glimpses of it in your eyes, that timeless, heavy knowing that says, I've seen this all before, and I chose to rise anyway. You're not playing with borrowed fire. You are the fire. You're not reacting to energy. You are the frequency. You're not seeking the truth. You carry it. That's what sets you apart. That's why they're shaken. Because when you walk in the room, you don't bring competition. You bring clarity. You collapse illusions without lifting a finger. You are the spiritual anomaly they didn't account for in their plans. They didn't think you'd be this calm, this centered, this powerful without ever asking for permission. Now they don't know what to do with you. So they watch, mimic, whisper because deep down they know the truth. You're not from their system. You're the signal that ends it. Number 7. You don't move for claps. You move because you were called. While they chase the algorithm, you follow alignment. That's why they watch from the sidelines while you move in silence but land like thunder. You don't dance for eyes, beg for likes, or perform for applause. In this world of curated masks and thirsty metrics, that makes you rare and powerful. They don't get it. They can't get it. While they're online screaming, "Look at me!" You're building legacies in silence. They can't understand how someone so invisible in the noise could be so undeniable in impact. They confuse attention with anointing. You don't move when you're noticed. You move when you're nudged by alignment, not approval. Your rhythm isn't digital. It's divine, internal, ancient, older than their formulas, sharper than their trends, and stronger than their applause. You don't ride waves. You are the current. You're not trying to stay relevant. You're trying to stay real. In this age, that's rebellion. They're addicted to cycles, to what's next, to virality, to fake energy dressed up as ambition. Your steps aren't driven by urgency. Your pace is sacred. When you move, it's because something deeper is pushing not the crowd, but the call. You don't launch when the market says go. You move when the universe says now. That infuriates them because your success is not predictable, your impact isn't on their schedule, and your rise doesn't follow their rules. They can't study it, steal it, or replicate it because they don't even know what's guiding it. The truth is, what guides you isn't external. It's encoded. You are the kind of person who listens to silence, trusts the still pull instead of the loud trend, and says no when yes is the popular answer, who disappears for a season only to return sharper, clearer, more aligned, not because you're flaky but because you're tuned in. Let's talk facts. The greatest movements in history were never loud when they started. Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't trending. He was walking, one foot in divine conviction, the other in terrifying clarity. Rosa Parks didn't post about her resistance. She sat still and shifted the weight of a nation. Nikola Tesla died broke, mocked, and misunderstood, but built the frequency that powers the world. You walk in that same current, the current that doesn't make sense to the world until it's too late to ignore. That's why they study you now, not because you're trendy, but because you're timeless. You weren't made for 15 minutes of fame. You were made for eternal echo. They chase relevance, you embody reverence. They grind for reach, you wait for revelation. You don't show up because it's your turn. You show up because it's your time. When you do, the room shifts, not because you're loud, but because you're aligned. So let them scramble for strategy, copy trends, overproduce, overpost, overcompensate. While they manufacture impact, you become it one silent, divine step at a time. You're not here to trend. You're here to transcend. Number 8. You were never given the manual, you became it. They want to copy your moves but skip the part where you bled for every page. You weren't handed the keys. No one rolled out a red carpet or whispered the formula in your ear. There was no mentor to call, no cheat sheet to lean on. You had to walk blind through storms while they studied in comfort. You had to figure out how to rise without instructions, how to breathe in rooms designed to choke you. Now they stare at your glow like it's downloadable, like they can reverse engineer what only pain could teach. The truth is, you are the unwritten manual, the one built from sleepless nights, unanswered calls, betrayal turned into boundaries, and failure that didn't stick. Every scar you carry is a paragraph. Every time you were left for dead but chose to keep going, that's a whole damn chapter. The ones trying to replicate your success are reading from books that never mention the fire, because you weren't made in systems, you were made in solitude. They think there's a trick behind your calm, a template behind your timing, but there is none. You didn't follow steps. You fought for direction, bled for clarity, and stood at crossroads no one prepared you for. You made decisions based not on trends, but on trust in something bigger, trust in yourself. Now that it's working, now that you're walking in the glow you built in darkness, they want to mimic the result without surviving the process. They want to build what you built but skip the seasons that broke you into who you are. They want your impact but not your isolation. They want your wisdom but not your war. They want your glow but not your grit. Let them try. Let them download your aesthetic and caption it with stolen inspiration. Let them mimic your moves, copy your voice, trace your light. It won't stick, because what you carry wasn't written in ink. It was etched in soul. You were never meant to follow their maps because your road didn't exist yet. You had to carve it with your bare hands. They forget that while they were networking, you were healing. While they were posing, you were processing. While they were looking for shortcuts, you were building stamina. You didn't come from a manual. You became the manual, the one no one wants to write because it requires too much real, too much raw, too much becoming. So when they study you now, confused by how you move with no guidebook, remember this. They're trying to replicate something that was never meant to be repeated, because you weren't made from strategy, you were made from survival. That can't be taught, copied, only lived. Number 9. They wanted you gone. Now they want to know how you rose. They built your exit like a grave. But you didn't just walk out. You rose like smoke, and now they're suffocating in the scent of your survival. They didn't want distance. They wanted your disappearance. They didn't just walk away. They pushed, slammed doors with the kind of finality that says, this is where your story ends. They were so sure you'd fade, crumble, shrink into nothing once their support, approval, and circle were gone. You didn't disappear. You rebuilt from rubble, from silence, from places they don't have the stamina to visit, let alone survive. You didn't just bounce back, you rose, and not like they expected. They were waiting for revenge, drama, a meltdown they could mock. Instead, you gave them radiance, peace, glow, power they didn't authorize and now can't ignore. Now they watch in silence, the same silence they once weaponized against you. But this time, it's not power. It's confusion, disbelief, fear. Because you weren't supposed to grow without them. You weren't supposed to evolve after they left. They tried to break your voice. Now they whisper your name behind closed doors. How did you do it? How did you go from cast out to captivating? They'll never say it out loud, but deep down they're wondering, what did we miss? They missed the fact that you were never built on their opinions, that you were never chasing acceptance. You were chasing alignment. While they sought control, you sought clarity. Once they were gone, you found it. You realized you were never rejected. You were redirected. You didn't rise by plotting revenge. You rose by healing, by burning the false self they tried to trap you in, by choosing yourself when it would have been easier to disappear. That kind of growth terrifies people because it means you were never dependent, just temporarily dimmed. It means their presence was never your foundation, just noise you had to outgrow. You see, they built their status on connections and control, but you built yours on truth. Truth doesn't need permission to rise. They tried to treat you like a phase, a lesson, a mistake. Now you're the blueprint. They scroll through your life like it's an instruction manual they were never given. You didn't write this in ink. You wrote it in blood, in silence, in self-respect, in chapters they skipped. Now it shows. You're not just alive. You're magnetic. You don't just exist. You command attention, not with noise but with presence. You became the proof they swore would never exist, that you can be cast out, shut down, left behind, and still come back stronger than ever. They wanted you gone. Now they want your formula. Your formula is this: you healed. You aligned. You refused to shrink and you rose anyway. Number 10, you made it and you made it whole. That's why they'll never understand you. You didn't sell your soul for the spotlight. You kept your spirit intact. That's the flex they'll never replicate. They expected you to break something on the way up. Your values, your voice, your integrity. That's how they did it. Trade a little truth for visibility. Sacrifice your essence for acceptance. Water yourself down just enough to fit inside the machine. You didn't. You rose clean. You built your glow without dirt on your hands. You climbed without cutting anyone's throat. You moved with grace and still got there wherever there is. Now they look at you baffled, confused, because you became everything they said was impossible. You didn't fake it, you faced it. You didn't just succeed, you stayed human through it all. That's what eats them alive. They've mastered performance, but you became presence. They polished their mask, but you became the mirror. You're not just walking proof that success doesn't require self-betrayal. You're the teacher they never deserved. They don't clap for that kind of success because it convicts them. You are the version of power they can't plagiarize, whole, healed, honest. While they chase applause, you carry something heavier. Peace. You didn't just make it. You made it without becoming them. That's why they're still watching, because deep down they know you won. You kept your soul. Now you see it clearly. You didn't just survive what was meant to end you. You became the proof that truth, pain, and power can coexist without compromise. You are the glitch in their system, the light they can't dim, the lesson they never thought they'd have to learn. They're watching because you've already won by staying whole. If this message lit something in you, like the video,